something. Yeah, I know. You're not the only one.
And so, welcome to the Big Questions podcast, where we talk about love, death, sex, religion, and all the big questions worth asking. I'm your host, Robert K. Elder, and today we're talking with comedian Ron Funches, who you know from NBC's Undateable, At Midnight, Drunk History, The Tonight Show, Conan O'Brien, among other things. He's at Zanies tonight in Rosemont through this weekend. Visit zanies.com for tickets and showtimes. And The Big Questions is sponsored by Shure, purveyors of professional microphones and headphones. You can check them out at shure.com. That's SHURE.com. And The Big Questions podcast is part of the Sun Times Media Local Podcast Network. Ron, welcome.
That's a good sponsor.
They're good microphones.
Yeah.
They're cool.
That's solid.
Hey, so this is, kind of a homecoming for you. You grew up in California, but you were born in California, but you grew up in Woodlawn. Is that right?
Yeah, I grew up on south side of Chicago, 69th and Woodlawn. It was not the best area, but not the worst area. So it was it's good to come back and not stay in that area.
Well, and when you come back, are there certain places you go back to? Or are there things that shaped you that you either gravitate to or go away from?
It's more the go away from. I don't. Yeah. I try not to go. Oh yeah, we worry about those levels got too high. Didn't expect that one.
No, we did not.
I just have friends that I try to visit with. I have some family that I try to see. But for the most part, it's just, a lot of work. It's a lot of morning stuff, and then the nap, and then doing shows at night. So there's not too much that I can do. But I definitely try to get a nice Italian beef and some pizza and just see my friends. That's it. Yeah.
So, but what were the things that I guess truly were formative for you here, besides the Sega Genesis and the WWF, which was probably the WWE, right?
No, it was the WWF at the time.
Right.
Things. The White Sox were big for me at the time. I would go to a lot of games with my uncle, and I also was just really into Navy Pier. Just doing that in summer, going to Taste of Chicago, doing stuff like that. Those are all things that are like the fond memories of this place for me. That and just my mom and my sister.
Mm-hmm. But I had this exact conversation like a decade ago with Morgan Freeman, who is also a native. But his associations with Chicago were not good. Yeah. So when he came back, it was, he hated the weather, and, he was in a gang here, and so it was all bad. And I know you had a hard time growing up here, but have you been able to turn that around? Or?
Yeah, I was a little bit apprehensive until I did the Just for Laughs festival here. Mm-hmm. And then I was, previous to that, all my memories were either just family memories or this is a place where you see people get shot and it's very cold and snowy. So there were definitely a lot of negative things for me there, but when I came back and I did the shows and just really got to see the good parts of the city and just enjoy and see my family, then I was just no matter what, I was raised here, I love Chicago, and it made me partially who I am, and I think it's made me a hard worker and tougher than I would be if I was just in Oregon the whole time. I always appreciate Chicago for that.
There's construction going in the next room,
it's
apparently.
Ruining my tender bone.
Well, but you talked about Chicago forming you in some way, and I've heard you talk in other places that you developed your sense of humor sort of as a defense mechanism. Is that right? Because your mother was dating somebody who was not good for her, and the way you sort of Well, you tell it. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly, I think for a lot of people, it's escapism, and for me, that's what comedy was a way to get out of some bad situations, when my mother being in an abusive relationship, and also for me, I was never a fighter, so my only ways out of things were talking. Yeah. So, that's how I do it.
I know. I think that's all journalists as well. We are not boxers.
No.
And so now when you come back, you can sort of have fun with the city rather than it being a dark cloud.
Yeah, I have fun. I just enjoy the food and the good aspects of it. And I still appreciate the other parts of it. I wouldn't change anything at all.
Well, and the thing that is interesting to me for your career arc, again, I told you before you were my favorite at midnight panelist. You also play DJ Kool Herc for Drunk History.
Yeah,
you sort of pop up everywhere. But you started your comedy career relatively late. I mean, you decided to become a comedian after being a banker.
Yeah.
And so I heard that there are two influences. One was you saw George Clinton. That changed your trajectory, and then the other one was going to the park with your son. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. Which one? The park?
The park, and then again, because I think they went hand in hand. Is that?
Yeah. I guess so. So the concert, George Clinton. I mean, it's just George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic. So I had to go to this concert, and it was the best time I had probably had in my life. Just dance for hours, and they were just having fun and having a good time, and just. It was just such a good party. And then I remember that they were leaving to go do another show, and I was leaving to go to work. And I was like, this isn't what I want at all. Like, I want my life to be what they're doing. But I knew I don't play any instruments, so I knew that wasn't the aspect of it. So, but I always loved comedy and was always interested in comedy, but I was afraid. I didn't think it was a real job that you could get. I just thought you were born a comedian. Like I said, I had my son when he was 2. He was diagnosed with autism, and I knew that I needed to make a lot of money, and I took him to this park where there were other differently disabled adults there, and just the way that they were treated by some of the people who some of the care workers, I guess would be what they're called, just really made me hit home that I need to make money. I need to make enough money that if I'm not taking care of him, I can pay someone well enough to treat him nicely.
Right.
And I didn't feel like these people were. So it was just a big motivation factor. And I was like, either I'm going to go to college and go find some type of vocation that I didn't know I was interested in, or I'm going to try this thing out that I think I really would be good at, but have always been afraid to do. So I went with that, and luckily it worked out. I even go back and think about it now, and I'm like, that sounds stupid. Like,
no, that's actually how epiphanies work. And again, if I'm just tracking the time right, that change was pretty instant. I mean, you made that change very, very quickly. And so, I'm sort of surprised you don't have whiplash from it, because here you are, and it is, is it almost 10 years later?
It's 8 years later.
8 years later?
Yeah.
So, and for a stand-up comic, some people are just learning your name. Many people know it because, again, you're sort of hard to avoid. You're everywhere. You're doing really well. But that is a one hell of a path to take. And again, I think a lot of people do it out of they love comedy, they want to do it, they do it out of like you said, some people are just born with it. I think they don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
But you did it for a reason. You did it for again, it's not 100% altruism, but you had a goal in mind.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. I always knew that I wanted to do it. It was just these were the things that kick-started me towards it. Like even it kind of reminds me of Breaking Bad, where he's like, oh, he's doing it for his kids. He's doing it for his kids. And then at the end of it, when he's lost his family and he's just by himself, he's like, oh, I did it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm 100% fully aware that I'm doing this for me, but I do it as hard as I do it, and I work as hard as I do for him.
Right, and you have this onstage persona, and I think of it as sort of like a giant pothead panda bear.
Yeah,
this very
that's pretty astute.
This lovable guy with this infectious giggle. But you're going to acting class. I hear that you're in a movie next year with Kevin Hart and Will Farrell called Get Hard, where you're playing against type.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I play a gang member The rapper T.I. is a gang leader, and I'm a member of his gang. I'm his bodyguard. So yeah, it was definitely a stretch for me. I'm not into gangs, nor have I never been into a gang. In fact, when I showed up on set, the costume director was just, I talked for 2 minutes, and she was like, I don't think this is a good part for you. And I was like, well, don't tell me that now, because we're about to shoot. But I think I did good. And actually, the best thing I got an email from a guy who I went to school with a long time ago, hadn't talked to him in years, and he's like, hey, I just went to the test screening for this movie. I saw it. I didn't even know that was you for the first 5 minutes. And he goes, you were scary.
Oh, that's great.
And I was like, that's what I need to hear. Especially, I get a typecast of being very adorable and stuff, which I like. And, I mean, I'm pro doing that. But I'm like, hey, I'm a full person that can sometimes be mean and scary, or also sexual.
Well, and like that's the other thing that before we talked about. So what did you need before the set? Tell me you need 3 things. What do you need?
Well, I was just making sure before I go back to my hotel that I wanted to go pick up a lighter, condoms, and a sandwich.
Yes.
A sandwich.
Just in case the sandwich got fresh, or what was the idea?
Well, the lighter is for my choice of drugs. And then
the sandwich is also
for my choice of drugs. And then the condoms are in case a lady friend of mine is in a good mood tonight. She's mostly a regular friend, but she's been flirty these last few texts, so I'm...
Sorry, there's construction or something. So tell me what that's like, because and the reason I'm asking is you were in a relationship for 10 years, and you had a son, and so you've been in LA for 2 years, and you just moved into your own apartment. So what is the bachelor life like? Did it take some adjusting? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it mostly takes adjusting on being by yourself and being like, oh, I'm gonna be weird and naked most of the time. But it's super cool. I didn't know how cool it was because I was a kid, then I was married, and then still a kid, and now I'm finally living by myself. So it's really nice, enjoyable, unless I lose my phone, and then I'm like, who's gonna call my phone to help me find my phone? Yeah,
like, that's when it gets. It's
part of your brain now. Like that's the thing, is the phone.
But I'm really liking it, and I get ladies to come over and make out on my couch. It's fun. I'm into it.
But here's the thing that's interesting is I know you have a thing for Lucille Ball and Jessica Rabbit. So is that on like your Tinder profile? Like, must be a redhead that's funny and. What is it specifically just about Lucille Ball that made you not only just like her, but made you attracted to her?
Okay. Again. She's beautiful. She's well built. She's curvy. And she had wit. And she was super smart. And I think that's a lot of things people get confused about. They want to portray Lucy as this ditzy character. She was not ditzy. She was just too smart for her own good. So she would make these schemes up that nobody could do. And then she'd get out of control. But that's the type of lady I want with me. A little scheming, crafty, just funny, well-built lady. That's why I like her. It's easy to see.
One of the other things that I think is so interesting about you, and I'm going to make a comparison that nobody else has made, but you and Mandy Patinkin have something in common, in that you both have a mantra before you go on. Mandy Patinkin is that he says the names of the people who he loved, who came before him, who died. Like that's his way of remembering. And your mantra is. Tell me about your mantra.
Okay, my mantra is that, let's see, I always have to do it in order to remember. Okay. First of all, it's just gratitude. So it's like, thank you for letting me be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. I know it's not through me or from me or within me that these abilities flow. Well, no, see, I already messed it up. It's not in me or within me, but through me. that abilities flow. I thank you for allowing me to be here. We're going to go out there and have a good time, and that's it. And then I just go out there and do it. It's just a reminder to keep my ego in check, no matter if it goes well or if it goes bad. That it's not me. That it's just me being in the moment and being present and interacting with people, and that's what's making it funny. It's not like I'm doing magic or anything of that nature.
But when did that start?
When I first started.
Really? So 8 years ago that started. And I know you called John, the manager at the Helium Club in Portland, one of your mentors. So, are you aware that other people do that? And what did John tell you in terms of just helping you become the comic that you are?
I was aware that some other people did this, but I think it's more like because I read some, I guess you would call them self-help books, but Secret, Illusions, what else is there? There's a lot of different things. But the 12 Habits of the Highly Effective People. There's just a lot of things where you go, oh yeah, if you do these things, they make sense. And just about bringing positive energy and telling yourself you're going to succeed rather than being negative. I mean, that's seems like an easy thing to do. And then John was just always he was just always helpful in making sure I wasn't being lazy and that I wasn't just relaxing on the fact that I was a good Portland comic. Yeah. And that he would always be like, yeah, you killed, but you did that same set last time. So
so he's pushing.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think a lot of people know he's a Portland comic, but many of them don't realize that you lived in Salem.
Yeah.
That is one hell of a commute. That's 45 minutes, an hour of driving north, past Kittyland, and so that drive must have been just brutal. That's a ton of commitment.
Yeah, it was, but I never really saw it. I mean, for me, it gave me time to think and come up with jokes and worry about my set on the way up there, especially if I'd been dealing with my son previously. And then also I was just like, well, this is the job. The job is traveling, and so if I'm not willing to drive an hour to go do a mic, why would I even do it? It doesn't make sense to even have it as a job if I'm not willing to put in the effort to drive an hour.
Yeah.
It made sense to me.
Yeah, but comic hours, sometimes you're wandering back at 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah, those are parts where you're like, oh, I'm just miking and I'm coming home at 4 and then I got to get up early to deal with my son. And my wife at the time would be like, I don't know what you're doing and who are you hanging out with, and so there's a lot of things, and it definitely, I think my marriage would have ended either way, but it definitely was a stressor on it. But it's also given me everything that I have. It's wonderful when I go home and I look at my apartment and I'm like, I have a nice place. It's taking care of while taking care of my son,
right?
And I'm doing it all with comedy,
right? And you have a Tempur-Pedic bed. That's the other part of it.
I have my Tempur-Pedic bed.
So there's something I told you I wanted you to talk about because I'm a native Montanan, and there's this thing called tribble runs.
Yeah.
Can you explain to people what a tribble run is and why it's called that?
Was named after Dave Tribble, who is this comedy booker, who basically, through some sort of witchcraft and magic, found out a route. Has these gigs in Billings, Montana, Idaho, parts of Washington, just all through areas you don't want to travel, where you go and do a show. You make $75 to $100, and then you drive 6 hours to your next place, hopefully that you get there in time to do your next show. And at the end of this whole run, this is probably about 8 to 10 different places. You usually have $200 at the end of it, so it's not a good idea. I don't recommend it. I actually have never done one.
Oh, really?
That's one of the luckiest things I can that when I was coming up, that was people were like, oh, if you want to go on the road, go out, do treble runs, and do things. And I was just like, but that's not who the comic I want to be. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to stay in Portland and just try to get better. And now I think that was it. Like, I wasn't worried, even though I was dead broke, I wasn't worried about making $50. I was like, I want to be I want to be on Comedy Central. I didn't care about going and doing triple runs.
And so you just turned 30 as well, is that
31.
Right? 31. So any I don't know, any noticeable changes, or did you have
my shoulder hurts.
Oh, really? Is that from pitching in the majors, or what is that?
It's from getting too stoned and falling asleep on my couch, which is the worst. I've hurt myself. I've been hurt for the last 2 days because I slept on my couch wrong. That's what 30 is like. Currently, also, I'm more confident, and that's the main thing I would tell younger Ron is like, hey, don't worry about dating these 20-year-old girls when you're 20. Date them when you're 30. It's a lot more fun. And you appreciate it more.
Well, and I love how you've sort of codified your goals. It's not only, just for your son, but whatnot. But you have two things. You have a group of friends called the Junior Mint Mafia.
Yeah.
And then the Fun Time Millionaires.
We're almost there.
So tell me about the Fun Time Millionaires.
Fun Time Millionaires don't exist yet. We're close. We're Fun Time almost 100,000 right now. But we're basically, it's just me and my friends who want to be very good at comedy, make a lot of money, and not be serious about stuff. Probably be the best example would be TJ Miller. Mm-hmm. He makes a lot of money, but you would never know that from how he lives. He just is himself no matter what. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. And my son's really good at that type of stuff because whenever I want to spoil him, he's just like, well, let's just get extra white meat chicken instead of this KFC. I'm like, you don't want to go to a fancy restaurant? He's like, no, let's just get all breast and thigh.
Well, I was going to say, so TJ's doing well. I mean, they killed him off in the last Transformers movie.
Yeah,
so maybe you too, Ron, can get big enough that they kill you off in the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
I would hope so. I would love that. I'd love that. TJ's nice. He's a nice guy.
So this is also a weird week for comedians in particular because we lost Robin Williams. What was your reaction to that? Like, I was on the road, so I'm still a little surreal to me.
Yeah, I was doing Greg Fitzsimmons' podcast or his radio show, and they came in and told us. So it was pretty shocking because I was trying to promote myself, and then all of a sudden I was like, I don't care about this anymore, and was just kind of like, oh, that's sad. It's just sad, but it's also like an individual situation where you're like, oh yeah, this is a guy who's dealing with depression and addiction, and it's just a reminder for me, for my personal, because I always take things personal, it's a reminder to always check my happiness, and that my happiness doesn't come from money or come from success in comedy, but from a balanced life and going out and trying to, meet friends and exercise and having people around me that love me, that care about me, whether I would do comedy or not. That's important for me to remember.
Do you think that's a generational reaction, though? Because, I mean, I look at all the guys, before, and that's, I'm just going to name off dead guys, unfortunately. Richard Pryor and Bill Hicks and, these guys who were obsessive in a way that perhaps was great for comedy, but not good for them personally. So do you think, you and TJ and the crew that comes up behind those kind of comedians, is that a lesson?
I think so. I think it's definitely a reaction in a lot of ways. For me, the one that it's a reaction to the most would be like Greg Giraldo. Yeah. Where you're like, oh, you're amazing. You're an amazing comedian. You're an amazing person, and you died alone in a hotel because of drugs. Yeah. And it's the thing to remember, like, oh, I don't want to be 50, 60 years old in a hotel by myself, not having ruining relationships that I've had. So it's like, it's a balance, and it's definitely not something where it's easy to do, but I'd rather make less money and be happy and be in a relationship and care about other people than to be the person that is $50 million rich, but doesn't have real people around them.
Yeah, but you've also said that comedy is a form of therapy for you, and then sometimes you realize it's not funny. And again, I just knowing the public persona of you, again, giant, pothead, panda bear. I cannot imagine you mad. Again, just seeing you in person, you have this energy and this glow. Tell me what the mad, Ron Funches looks like, and would I even notice?
You probably notice, yeah, because I'm probably yelling at you.
But have you been yelling at me, and I've just not been noticing?
No, it just takes a lot, and I probably more remove myself from the situation before I get to that point, usually. But I've become better at not carrying other people's energy. So if you just want to flick me an insult, it's easier for me to just insult you right back and move on.
Yeah.
Than to be like, just take it and then be like, that's when I think you have problems and anger problems, is when you're like, oh, I just kept it all in and now I need to burst. Like, I think I say pretty cool because I'm like, oh, you don't like me? I don't like you. Like, we did Mancow earlier and I was never mad, but when he came to talk to me and I was like, no, you completely talk to me like you don't give a crap about who I am and you don't care to learn who I am. And that's pretty much been this interview. And he laughed and everybody else laughed because they knew that's how he had been treating me. Yeah. And to me, that's all I needed to say. I don't need to be angry, but I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, I'm like, oh, you bring me here and this sucks and I'm not having fun. It's just like, no, it's like, I know what the situation is. Let's address it and then I'll move on and I'm going to go get stoned later and it's not going to be an issue.
Well, hopefully this has been more interesting for you. And you've been listening to the Big Questions podcast. Again, this is Robert Elder and you've been listening to Ron Funches. You think we got it all?
I think we did. This has been pretty fun. You were right. You didn't know a lot about me. You knew enough about me that it made me uncomfortable.
We're just going to rename it the Uncomfortability Podcast.
You knew about my son. You knew about my you knew about my mom's history.
Oh, wait, no. We're going to bring in some ex-girlfriends. Cheryl,
there won't be too many. You can grab my ex-wife and a couple other ladies that probably won't have complaints.
So Ron, thanks again. Our music is by Ron Funches. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.